you so much, Amy, for being with us and sharing your journey. So you've been through a heartbreaking journey. Tell us how it all started.
Okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I'm the oldest of 6 children, and we grew up in a family where my mother suffered mental injury. She'd been through a very traumatic childhood herself, with having her mum absent from the house, and because of her own mental illness, and so grew up with just a father and her siblings. There was abuse in their household, and so because mum had that lack of foundation, she had difficulty herself in being able to manage her emotions, how to process things. So she always did a lot for us. She was very generous. Mum, she worked very hard. She always, made sure that food was on the table, and in that sense she really looked after us. But from the emotional side of things, we didn't really grow up with that kind of support.
How did growing up in this environment affect you as a young person?
I found that because of the instability at home, that when I would go to school, that I felt that I didn't have an understanding of who I was or what my place was in the world, and also I was very fearful. So I began to get bullied at school, and I didn't know how to process what was happening, and so school was very difficult for me. I felt that I didn't want to be there. It was difficult being at home, but it was difficult being at school as well, so I didn't feel safe. I often felt in my heart that I wanted to run away, and that, maybe to start again. So
something new, something fresh.
Yeah, started new, around new people, and I guess having a chance to recreate myself. I felt that I was put into a pigeonhole a lot. I felt that people didn't understand me for who I was. So I started to wag school. I started to get involved in drugs and alcohol, and I started getting drawn to people who I guess weren't really interested in school. I guess they weren't really interested in my well-being, but I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere. So one day when I was skipping school, a girl who was quite a lot older than me, she was maybe 8 years older than me, and my friend, she approached us in a pinball parlour, and she came and asked us, would you like to make some money to come to a party? She said, I'll give you $50 each if you come to a party with me. And so we were 15 years old at the time, or approximately 15, and my friend was a little bit younger than me. And so she took us along to an industrial estate, and that night, and into a warehouse, which was a clubhouse for a motorcycle gang, and we worked behind the bar, working as the topless barmaid. And then I ended up getting an ongoing job there. I stayed in it for a while, and then I ended up leaving because one of the men who would go there regularly, who was actually the brother of the girl who'd approached us in the first place, I started dating him, and he turned out to be violent. He was very controlling. He wouldn't allow me to have a job. I had to stay home in the house so that he could know where I was. Sometimes he wouldn't come home for 2 weeks or a long period of time, and just leave me in the house by myself. And so I felt that I wasn't allowed to leave. I wasn't allowed to have my own independence. And one day he came home, and he just told me to get out, and he threw all my things out in the driveway, and he said, he didn't give me an explanation. There was no reason for it. He just said get out. He'd had enough of having me around, so he just decided, I don't want you anymore. And so I actually had a suicide attempt after that. I was very confused about what had just happened. It all happened kind of very quickly, and after that I ended up leaving, going interstate to try and make a new life, and I just kept finding myself in the same situations. I found myself with another partner who would leave me, abandon me in an apartment.
Wow.
I'd be at home sometimes without food. I had this period of time where I just lived off a box of cereal and cups of tea.
Wow.
I just had a kettle and a few cups and some cereal, and yeah, some friends found out that I was living there in this house, and so they came to get me. And I think for me, the reason that I stayed, because I didn't have a sense that I could leave. So when I'd be left in this house and told wait till I get back, I guess I believed that I had to obey that.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that I had a choice. I didn't actually recognize that I could actually just leave, and I thought if I left, where would I go anyway? So my friends came and got me, and I ended up looking for a job in the local paper, and I felt that I had a choice between working for $12 an hour in the supermarket, but just next to this advertisement there was also an ad for working as a topless barmaid for $25 an hour. So I thought, well, I have experience, and you know, it's probably better to have more money. So I went for this job, and I was underage, so I had to make I altered my birth certificate, you know,
wow.
just with a pen. I scratched the ink
Wow.
off and I altered it with a pen, and it was very obvious, you know, the lady interviewing me would have known that this was a false certificate. They knew that I was underage, and but they still hired me. So I was sent to work in bars and clubs and football clubs, and work gentlemen's lunches and things like that, on boats and all sorts of places. So it was like an agency. They sent me around everywhere. So I got more heavily involved in drugs then. Started injecting drugs, amphetamines, and I guess I just reached a point where I thought, I guess deep down I knew that there was a better life for me, and so I kind of I took a time where I just walked away from all of it. I thought, I can't do this, you know, I deserve better. And so I came back to Melbourne, and I made I got into a traineeship, which was great. So by the time I was 18, I got into a traineeship, and I did a certificate in office admin. I started to learn to become a bookkeeper. And then once I finished my traineeship, after a year, I got offered a job in an accounting firm, which was very shocked.
Yeah, so you tried to turn your life around.
Yeah, so I had this opportunity, and I felt, you know, in my new job, I felt respected, and you know, I felt worthy, and I really, I enjoyed this, you know, because I think I've always had a heart to work. You know, as a child, I would go, or a teenager, I'd go to work with my dad, and you know, I liked working in the office, working with the accountant, entering all the data and managing the finances and that kind of thing. So I've always had a heart for business, for
good with numbers.
finances. Yeah, I'm good with numbers. I have a very strong problem solving brain.
Great.
So so I did get my life back on track for quite a season. I guess for a decade. I got to work in bookkeeping, in accounting. I attempted to do my degree. I studied for a year, and then I thought, you know, I'm earning good money in my job. I don't think I need a degree, so I only did 1 year, and then I decided not to do it. But I was still struggling during this time. I think outwardly people saw, you know, wow, you're doing really well. Even my parents, my dad was really proud of me. Every time I saw him, he'd say, wow, you know, Amy's an accountant and she's doing so well. But I think I hid a lot of the struggles that I had. I didn't want people to know what was really going on. So I still struggled with addiction. I still struggled with heavy drinking, taking, I'd go through seasons of taking a lot of drugs, and just, I guess, living quite a party kind of lifestyle and that sort of thing. I guess, always going from relationship to relationship. I was very unstable in my relationships with people. I couldn't seem to get a stable foundation. So I just yeah, I guess I kind of, I use work as a bit of an addiction as well.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, at least this is one place where I kind of feel normal, and you know, I guess I felt it was a bit of a double life.
Yeah.
And I was very used to that, so you know, to make money and work hard and that kind of thing was a bit of a...
So something big happened and you had to make a decision which path you wanted to keep going in your life.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened.
So in 2007, so I'd got myself into quite a good job. I was very happy in this job. I really enjoyed it. It was the best job that I'd had so far, and I thought my career was really going on track. And one day on the way to work, I got hit by a car and I broke my neck, my collarbone, and I ended up in hospital. And I guess I felt that, you know, things were just starting, I felt things were just improving and getting better and better finally. And then suddenly I got hit by a car, and I thought, how can so many bad things happen to one person, you know? Like, I hadn't been through enough trauma. I thought, why did this happen? And it really rocked me. I went back to, you know, I tried to put all the drug life behind me and everything. And what happened was I got addicted to then the prescription painkillers. And I ended up getting to a point where this was causing, by the time I went back to work, my performance was being affected. I was addicted to painkillers and sleeping pills. So my work wasn't as good quality as it was, and I was starting to have tension between me and my manager. So I thought, you know, what am I going to do? I think I'm going to get fired. And so I contacted a friend of mine. I'd remembered a friend of mine had shared that she had gotten into prostitution as a, you know, she was in her 20s, I guess. And so I contacted her and I said, I think I'm going to lose my job. Do you think I can do this job for a while just to, you know, have the financial stability? And so she gave me some brochures and to look at, and those brochures had come from an organisation that's actually funded by our government. And so these brochures portrayed, they actually, they showed me these pictures of like cartoon kind of comic book style pictures of these women that they called sex workers. And so I thought, oh, I've never heard of sex workers before. I'd only heard of prostitute, and I thought it made it sound like a normal job. And I thought, okay, maybe I can actually do this. And so I just took a chance and I tried. And when I started, I thought, yeah, this is actually good, because I felt that, I don't know, I thought that the job was empowering. When I first started, I thought, you know, I've lost so much in my life. You know, I didn't share before, you know, the amount of, you know, like you know, sexual abuse that I've also suffered through, but I felt like I was being repaid for what had been stolen from me.
I
felt like these customers or clients or whatever they wanted to call themselves I felt like they were reimbursing me for what was stolen. That was, I don't know. But then I reached a very shocking point in my job where I was actually sexually assaulted by 2 clients in one day. And so when I went out to tell the receptionist that what had happened, and I explained to her that a client had raped me, she said to me, "Isn't that your job?" And so, you know, I guess I went home in shock, and I couldn't work for maybe a couple of months. Like, I couldn't bring myself to go back, but I needed the money. Like, so I was, I guess by this point I felt that I was trapped. I felt that I had to go back, but I really didn't want to. And so the rest of my time that I spent working was, I really worked the rest of my time there feeling that I was being actually abused by every client that I went with. I felt like in my own self this resistance, and I felt that I thought, I haven't been repaying myself. I've been allowing people to pay me to abuse me. And I just, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to start asking.
Rock bottom.
I did. I needed answers. I thought, how can somebody go through so much so many times over and over again, and you know, all these traumas happening one after the other. And yeah, so I was just asking questions in my own heart, and I now understand that, you know, even though I wasn't saying it out loud, it was like a prayer. It was like a cry for help. And yeah, I started to see that there was actually somebody listening. I didn't know at the time, but things started to change when I reached that point. Some doors started opening. Through a few coincidences, I ended up meeting somebody who pointed me towards this rehab. And in the rehab, I really had a lot of breakthroughs. And something happened to me in that rehab where I knew God was real, and I couldn't actually deny it. It was such a powerful experience that I had there, that I just knew I had to change my life. And so I got out of the rehab, but the first thing I did when I got out of the rehab was I went back to work in the brothel. And it was only a short time back there, I guess, with this new kind of belief that I had. And yeah, I suddenly realized this place is crazy, like it's not right. And I one day I just walked out. I said to the receptionist, I'm clearing out my locker and I'm not coming back. And so I left, and then that was the time that I never went back to that again.
And then the healing started from that.
Yeah, so I guess going through this process of like going from not believing in God to suddenly believing in God, I was like, wow, okay, that's nice. Like, okay, God is real. So what? Like,
what do I do now?
What does that mean? Like, what does that mean for me in a practical sense? I think I'm a very practical person. I'm like if I believe something, I have to know how to act it out. I have to know how to follow it through and put it into practice. So I started really asking serious questions, like, you know, like what is praying, and what is what is God all about, and what, you know, what does this life look like? And so I met a girl, a woman who seemed like she knew something that I didn't know. She seemed full of joy. She was very confident around people. She was very genuine. I felt she was a very good listener. And she had these qualities that I was like, I really looked up to her. So I started to ask her. She took me to do a course called Alpha, where you ask questions about the Christian faith. And so I went along to this. The first time I went, I thought, I'm not interested in this. It sounded a bit religious. But the second time I decided to go back, and I had a miracle happened while I was listening. I heard the message that the man at the front was speaking, and I started to have this burning sensation in my neck while he was speaking. And then as he continued to speak, it left me, and I just felt this warmth, like I felt God's love. And
so good.
Yeah. And so what he'd been explaining was he was talking about Jesus, because I didn't know anything about Jesus. I was like, what does Jesus have to do with God? Like, I don't get it. But he just said, you know, if we're down here and God was up here, then, you know, our sin sits on top of us like this, and it means we can't communicate with God. But he said that when Jesus died on the cross, he took the sin onto himself, leaving us free to communicate with God. He said in the Bible times, this people who owed a very large debt would have that debt hung around their neck, and they would go to the marketplace, and wealthy men would come along and they'll say, I'll pay your debt and then you come and be my slave. But every so often someone would come along and they say, I'll pay your debt, but you're set free.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, that's when I had this experience of like God's love. And I thought, my response was like this, I felt this love in my heart for Jesus.
Okay.
And then I thought, the second thought after that was, I think I've lost the plot.
No.
So I didn't want to tell anyone. I kept it a secret for a while, but I waited, and the pain in my neck didn't come back, and I continually had these like warm thoughts, and my thinking
Joy.
was changed. Yeah, joy, peace.
Yeah.
Yep. So
good.
I said to my friend, does this mean I'm a Christian now? Because I ended up sharing with her, and she said, you know, that's wonderful. And so I guess from that point, that's how I became a Christian.
Yeah.
Just from that experience. Like it wasn't something that I guess anyone told me, but I guess God came to me himself, and I could see that pattern. So
Wow.
I love this verse from Hannah's prayer, 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 8. He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world.